Congratulations, everyone. Libs have caught on to something that we figured out 2 years ago. Crime is a problem, and I've been furious for several years now. And everyone immediately, Anna's just a secret right winger. Anna's just a secret right winger.
Again, it blows my mind that Cenk and Anna think this is proving their point. The Democrats took your advice. They ran a pro-cop candidate who is almost like the number one thing that Kamala Harris is known for is being a cop. The number one thing the Democratic candidate was known for is being tough on crime, for being a literal cop. And yeah, and they lost. So I guess we were right. Can you acknowledge that, Cenk and Anna? Can you acknowledge that you were freaking wrong? And when the Democrats run the kind of candidate that you urge them to run, the kind of candidate that really cares about crime and isn't going to gaslight the American people about its existence, that's Kamala. She did that. She's an Ana Kasparian liberal, for real, at least when it comes to that issue. Same with the trans stuff. Kamala Harris didn't talk about freaking trans issues. She ran away from it like every Democrat did. Every Democrat did. Look at Colin Allred in Texas. They tried to accuse him of, he likes, boys and girls sports or whatever. He comes out here and says, no, I don't. Trans people are bad, and I actually don't like them. Okay, so did he win his election because he took Cenk and Anna's advice? Did he, Zach? Nope. So I'm interested in your opinion on this one. Zach, here's Cenk and Anna learning all the wrong lessons, quite frankly.
What's new?
Yeah, from this election.
The thing that surprised me least about the election was the sharp red shift in these big cities. Because if you just talk to anybody who lives in them, they are furious. And this idea that like, oh no, the economy is actually good or crime is actually down, this is all just Fox News, like shut the up with that.
Congratulations, everyone. Libs have caught on to something that we figured out 2 years ago. Crime is a problem. And if you just tell people, voters specifically, that it's not a problem, and it was way worse in the 90s, so you shouldn't be complaining, there will be backlash. There will be blood, okay? And so here we are. Ezra Klein was on Pod Save America to reflect.
I feel like about 4 years ago, maybe even less, TYT would consider Ezra Klein to be the hack that he is. Now they're like celebrating the fact that he's saying the same shit as them. No, that's an indictment of your brand, TYT. That's an indictment of your bullshit talking points. The fact that Ezra Klein, good job. Ezra Klein agrees with you. Wow. I thought this was the home of anti-establishment independent media. What the hell?
Yeah, the dude's podcast is hosted on the New York Times. Okay, he was a founder of Vox Media.
On the disastrous election cycle that we just experienced for the Democratic Party. And he touched on how poorly blue cities have been run by progressive leaders. Got to keep it real. And so here's more of his argument. Here's more of his revelations, and then we'll break it down further.
The sense of disorder rising, right? Not just crime, but homeless encampments, trash on the streets, people jumping turnstiles in subways, crazy people on the streets. You just talk to people and they're mad about it. They feel.
Guys, this is going to sound rude, but I'm telling you, I lose hours and hours of sleep based off of how my voice sounds. And it is giving me a lot of relief knowing that this guy has a really bad problem pronouncing his S sounds too. And he's 10 times more famous than I'll ever be.
Different than it used to be. I mean, in San Francisco, like the fury is overwhelming, and you see that it's not just the presidential level. London Breed, the SF mayor, just lost re-election. In Oakland, they recalled the mayor. A bunch of the progressive DAs across the country were recalled or beaten in re-election campaigns. If Eric Adams has a lot of problems, but if he were
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Eric Adams is who
obviously on the ballot, he would almost certainly, it seems to me, lose. You have to be able to govern well. People don't follow politics, but they live in the place they live.
Yeah, I follow politics, and I also live in the place I live. And I've been furious for several years now. And everyone immediately, Anna's just a secret right winger. Anna's just a secret right winger. No. I'm not a secret right winger. I see the dysfunction, and I see.
I'm not a secret right winger. Here, let me tell you a bunch of right wing policies I'm in favor of. Yeah. Bro, also, can we just talk about the fact that Gavin Newsom, Eric Adams, they just let Ezra Klein cite Eric Adams as a representation of a progressive city with a liberal mayor. That guy is a Republican. He's under countless corruption investigations. I mean, I know you're familiar with Olayemi's work, and I don't even have to ask, but if anybody else is not familiar, she's exposed his ass countless times over on her channel, as well as to his face on The Breakfast Club. If you want to use those guys like the mayor of Oakland as like the beacon of progressivism, then you no longer understand progressivism and you cannot brand your content as such. You are hysterical centrists that believe anybody who talks about justice and, you know, wants to be courteous to, I don't even think courteous is the right word, right? But at least wants to address the root causes of these things like crime and homelessness, right? Instead of just locking people up and throwing away the key. What we're seeing, guys, is a regression of like 90s style politics. She says, oh, it's not as bad as it was in the 90s. And why do you want to address it with the same way? You know what? It didn't work then and it's not going to work now. You can't just put more cops on corners and address crime that way. You can't just, you know, make bail more expensive and address crime that way.
Also, let's address the elephant in the room, Zach. Anna wants to keep talking about all these progressives that lost their election and how that must be because of a backlash to left-wing policies. Can I remind you all who also lost their election for the president of the United States, someone who hails from California, Kamala Harris. Guess what? You're not going to find a Democrat who's much more tough on crime than the former top cop of California. But yeah, Kamala Harris. She was just the Democratic nominee for president. Pretty tough on crime, right? That was actually a big criticism, pretty well articulated back in the day by Tulsi Gabbard, of all people, who, of course, now is sold out. But if you look at that moment on the debate stage, yeah, she articulates how Kamala Harris was about as tough on crime as you could possibly get as a Democratic prosecutor in a giant state like California. It's true. She was vicious. She was a literal cop. The Democrats ran an actual cop, Cenk and Anna.
The top cop.
At the top of their ticket. You know who they nominated last time? The author of the crime bill. And you want to sit here and tell me that the Democratic Party is losing because they're not adequately addressing the notion of crime? They're not adequately addressing the notion that crime exists? All right, then who the should they? Do you want them to nominate Joe Arpaio? I'm serious. Because this is your message. This is the message from TYT. Oh yeah, the Democrats lose because they gaslight people into thinking that crime is. What do you want them to nominate? Rudy Giuliani?
Bro, they do have a cop in New York City. They have a cop for a mayor in New York City, and they cited him as a progressive by some stretch of the imagination, by some warped delusions that they have, because they want us to be the ones that are wrong because they can't accept that they were the ones that are wrong. I actually gave Ezra Klein credit because he said Joe Biden needs to drop out. He needs to do the right thing and drop out. Broken clocks are right once, twice a day, but that's about the last time you should listen to Ezra Klein, okay? Because this dude is completely out of touch and completely delusional.
And like I said, if the Dems had put up some abolitionist anarchist and got wiped out by Donald Trump, maybe I'd be like, yeah, she has a point. People don't like this. But why does it never work in the other direction? Why can't we have a reckoning with the fact that America just rejected a Democrat who ran on a pro law enforcement, tough on crime message? Maybe people don't like that. Maybe it repulsed them. Maybe people don't like it when Democrats sound like Republican light. Maybe they know it's bullshit. Maybe when Kamala Harris said, oh, I'm a gun owner and I'm going to shoot you if you come in my house, maybe people knew that was pandering. Maybe people knew that was garbage. You ever consider that?
Class Americans getting their catalytic converters stolen, okay, getting their homes broken into, getting assaulted on the subway or the train. And I'm supposed to just shut my mouth about it and tell everybody everything's fine because it's not the 90s? No, I'm not gonna wait until after the election to talk about how it's a problem. I'm gonna talk about it well before the election so, you know, maybe Democrats, maybe progressives can recalibrate. But that's the thing about the left. They don't believe in recalibrating, okay? They think they know it all. They think they're the best. They think that anyone who crosses them or tweaks them or critiques them is the bad guy. And congratulations, in the state of California, Donald Trump flipped 10 blue counties into red counties. Let's take a look at the map. This is the electoral map. First one on the left.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, there's a lot of myths about the state of California. I wish we had Salisa on here right now. She's at work right now, but she grew up in California. She grew up in the Valley. And one of the things that she'll talk about is there's a lot more conservative people in California than we ever think about. And there always has been, right? This is one of those times where it's like, yeah, dude, landmass doesn't vote. Okay, so yes, they narrowly won in 2020 and then narrowly lost. But because of the way that state elections are run, statewide elections, right, or national elections where they count the entire total of the state, it's like New York, right, where Albany, it might be conservative as.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't know as much about the geography of California, but I also think it's fair to say that, yeah, part of the reason why the right might be gaining ground in a state like California is because the Democratic Party followed the advice of Cenk and Anna. They ran a super pro, tough on crime, pro cop, Republican light candidate. And yeah, guess what? It did depress the votes of Democrats in California, because what Democrat is enthusiastic about going out and voting for a Republican? They're not. That's why they're Democrats instead of Republicans. When you start ceding the ground to Republicans on every issue, from crime to the border to whatever, then yeah, more people are just going to become Republicans. You've normalized their position. And that's what TYT is doing. TYT is contributing to the red pilling of America that is illustrated by this map, at least in this election cycle. Yeah, I agree. It'll probably go back to blue by the next one. But at least in this election cycle, yeah, it's people like Cenk and Anna that have red-pilled the country to this extent with their stupid propaganda bullshit talking points.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Left-hand side, of course, is from 2020. And then, oh, would you look at that? One of the most liberal parts of the country has become increasingly red. I wonder why that happened.
And again, the reason those people are being driven to the right, Gavin, as you listed, is because they're normalizing the views. And also the rent in California is getting really expensive, and when people can't afford to live, they run to the right.
Yeah, and again, that's a policy of neoliberal Democrats, not the left.
Exactly.
That's the policy of people like Rick Caruso, who Cenk and Anna supported for mayor of Los Angeles.
Okay, in New York, last time Biden won, Trump lost by 24. This time he only lost by 12. Remember, he was talking about how he's going to win New York, and of course he wasn't going to win New York, and that was outrageous. But what he was getting at is, I'm going to do a lot better than you expect, and he did. Except there was one show that expected it, and it was us. And so, look, I think that our advantage is that we're not bullied by the media gaslighting industrial complex. And so there's two different factors here. So there's the extreme left, identitarian left, whatever we're calling them these days, right? So those guys say, no, crime is imaginary, it doesn't affect anyone, it's blah, 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 right? And I'm like, look, guys, first of all, look at the stats. The stats are clear.
The stats are clear, Cenk. They show that violent crime is down in all 50 states.
In fact, I was on Hassan's show, my nephew, and he pulled up the stats as we were doing the debate on it, and the stats showed that I was right. So
what stats are you referencing? Why aren't you pulling them up now? I don't remember that in Cenk's giving. This is a total fucking lie.
There's no question about it. And then you go talk to real people. Can you guys please, everybody overused the term.
He's gotten to the point where he has to pathetically name drop Hassan too.
Touch grass. But go talk to non-political people. So I go to a picnic or a barbecue or whatever it is, and as soon as I got non-political people, I immediately ask them what they're thinking. And in California and New York and San Francisco and Philly and Washington, the first thing that would come out of their mouth is, I hate the crime. The crime's out of control, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, etc.
Yep. So after he's done, shopping along the north side in Chicago, when all of his friends and him meet for a Skyline martini, they're talking about how dirty and disgusting all of the criminals have become, and rooting around the city, and how what were once great American cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles have just become, crime-ridden flea bags. It's hard to distinguish the way that Cenk describes America from the way that Donald Trump describes America sometimes.
Also, no one on the left denies the existence of crime. I've said this a million times, but yeah, obviously crime is an issue, even though it is down. Both things can be true at once. Yeah, if you're a normal person whose life is affected by crime, of course that's going to be an issue for you in your daily life. If you own a small business or some shit and it gets broken into by someone who's too poor to feed themselves or needs money and is so desperate for money and food that they break into your small business, yeah, of course that's going to negatively affect your life. Of course, no one on the left would ever deny that. The difference between the left and the right is that the left actually has the solutions for these issues. What's the solution to an issue like that? Well, maybe how about rent control? How about cracking down on price gouging? Things that would ease the desperation of the people committing these crimes in the first place, these crimes of desperation. What's the solution of right-wingers? What's the solution of Cenk and Anna? It's to fund the police more. It's to put more freaking pigs on the street and take more money out of the social safety net, take more money out of the resources that prevent people from falling into that state of desperation and funnel it back into the pigs who make their misery worse. That's their solution. So no, it's not that we don't care about crime. It's not that we don't know about it or acknowledge it. It's that we just don't harp on it ad nauseum because we understand that until serious fundamental reforms like rent control are put into place, yeah, there's no point in just demonizing our neighbors who might not be as privileged as us.
I also want to just add that the cops don't even do their jobs, right? Which is the last point that we'll make before we let this keep playing, because everything Gavin said was absolute wax. It was fire, bro. And the truth is that even if you put a million more pigs on the street, they're all lazy, overtime hungry, little donut eating, finger popping each other's asshole piglets. Okay, I swear to God, they don't do anything. All right, I was getting really stressed out about all the political stuff. Gavin and I took a few days off. I just retreated into doing some cocktail bartending. I worked on the new menu that we were working on. I was having a great time, but I got home really late on what was it, Saturday night or something like that. And there was a guy who was being extremely reckless and dangerous. Okay, so he had this big GMC wagon, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning. He's out front on Rock Hill Grill at I think we're 17th, 16th and Grand Boulevard, right? And he's burning out and spinning his whip all around and around, and he loses control of the whip, and it goes all the way up onto the sidewalk. And I'm like, dude, that could have hit somebody, that could have killed somebody. Fortunately, it was at 3 o'clock in the morning, so the only people who are out are bartenders like me. And then he just tears off all the way down Grand Boulevard towards Power and Light District. Not a cop come, not a flurry. There's dust everywhere. Me and a bunch of not a bunch of other people, one other dude, we're looking at each other what the fuck did we just see? And I'm like, bro, am I gonna be out here talking about how crime's going up in our neighborhood? Gavin, you know what? I think we need some more pigs. No, because the stupid pigs won't do anything anyway. Okay, and do I really want that guy to fucking go rot in a jail cell? No, I want him to understand the consequences of his actions and to not fucking do that when you're behind the wheel of a car and you're taking other people's lives into hands, right? Does it do me any good if he's sitting in a cell block?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, someone sit that down and talk some sense into his brain, please.
That's what you should be doing, right? Because he's probably a young guy.
And I asked him, what do you think about Biden? This is now 2 years ago, a year ago, et cetera. And they're like, obviously too old. What are they doing? It's crazy, right? So, but when we would tell both the identitarian left and the corporate Democrats, you guys are crazy. Biden's way too old and crime is real and people are really pissed about it. They're like, no, that doesn't suit our purposes. Since that's not in our ideology, we reject it out of hand. Well, if you keep rejecting facts, well, this is where you're going to wind up.
100%.
So, all right, I'll get to Ezra Klein in a second.
So I want to go to a segment featuring Harry Enton because they did their post-election analysis and they noticed a trend when it came to the blue parts, the bluest parts of the country and what they have noticed following the 2024 presidential election. So let's take a look at that.
We're about to hear from some rich people, some rich out of touch people, guys. Just letting everybody know, nobody that's about to speak makes less than 180 grand.
Donald Trump put up the best Republican performance for a Republican nominee for president in at least 20 years, if not the entire 21st century. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco. Across the map, Donald Trump put up historically strong numbers for Republican candidate, for president in places that truthfully, if you had asked me 8 years ago,
again, it blows my mind that Cenk and Anna think this is proving their point. The Democrats took your advice. They ran a pro-cop candidate who is almost the number one thing that Kamala Harris is known for is being a cop. Am I wrong?
Laughing at weed, putting moms of truant children in jail, laughing, at the thought of people going to jail, right? Yeah, dude, it was impossible to separate her from that. One of the most viral images of her during the 2020 primary was her in her police hat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, bro. The number one thing the Democratic candidate was known for is being tough on crime, for being a literal cop. And yeah, and they lost. So I guess we were right. Can you acknowledge that, Cenk and Anna? Can you acknowledge that you were freaking wrong? And when the Democrats run the kind of candidate that you urge them to run, the kind of candidate that really cares about crime and isn't going to gaslight the American people about its existence, that's Kamala. She did that. She's an Ana Kasparian liberal, for real. At least when it comes to that issue. Same with the trans stuff. Kamala Harris didn't talk about freaking trans issues. She ran away from it like every Democrat did. Every Democrat did. Look at Colin Allred in Texas. they tried to accuse him of, oh, he likes, boys and girls sports or whatever. He comes out here and says, no, I don't. Trans people are bad, and I actually don't like them. Okay, so did he win his election because he took Jenkins Anna's advice? Did he, Zach?
Nope.
Nope.
And the other thing I might add is that the advice that TYT is giving is going to result in a further divide between people who lean left that show up to vote and people who don't show up to vote. And do you know who shows up to vote when the Democrats run a candidate on the message that Cenk and Anna are advocating for? Rich people, just like I said we were going to hear from in this clip. The plus $100,000 annual salary folks, yeah, they'll show up for this. They're worried about crime. They're out of touch. They're victims of the hysterics, right? They believe the propagandistic lies. Okay, but guess who's going to stay home? Working people, the people that the Democrats actually need to win. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I can barely afford to live in Chicago, LA, New York City, or San Francisco. Gavin and I, as far as the world is concerned, we're very privileged guys. Okay, we make a good living. I wouldn't quite call it a great living, but a good living, right? We live in Kansas City. We couldn't afford to up and move our show to Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, right? We wouldn't be able to afford to pay rent there. We wouldn't be able to have a studio space there. We wouldn't be able to afford any of it, right? So people like us aren't going there, right? So the people who are there, who are advocating there, are either people who are working tirelessly just to feed themselves and keep a roof over their heads, or people who have the free time to go in front of, a group of people and talk about how bad crime is, right? And that's the bifurcation. Okay, they're getting all the elite Silicon Valley tech bros to vote Democrat, and they're not getting any of the working people to vote Democrat anymore.